Today we'll continue taking a look at the Python Bootcamp, and for those of you who are sandbagging, you were in Donna or Jeff's class and already learned Python, I know who you are, don't worry. Let's take a look at a couple of things in Python. Now, I mentioned on Tuesday that I'd show you how to create a Python code template. And that's within PyCharm, and it's one of the reasons I like to use PyCharm. It gives us that option. So what I'd like you to do is open up PyCharm, close any scripts that are currently open or running so you have a blank canvas to work with. And as you're doing that, you can create any number of different templates for a variety of different programs that you want to in PyCharm. That's what makes it versatile. The name sounds kind of tacky or funky, but it actually is a very, very useful tool. Give you a second to get that done. Next step, go to the File menu, left click on it, and drop down to Settings, and click on Settings. And when you do, this series of menu options will come up. And what we are looking for in the editor is the File and Code Templates. And when you have that open, if you look in the right-hand window, you'll see the templates that are currently available. And if you can think back to Tuesday when we used PyCharm the last time, when we opened it up at the top, it had your user ID, or should have had your user ID. And that's because there's a Python template script already set up. And what we're going to do is modify that script. Before we do that, though, we want to make a copy of it. So highlight the Python script. And at the top of that window, you'll see an icon that when you mouse over will say Copy Template. So go ahead with Python script selected, hit the Copy Template icon.
Mine doesn't have the author equals user.
Does it have Python script?
It has Python script.
Good, you're good. Don't worry about what's in the code window. We're going to change it anyway. Okay? What you should have now at the bottom of that list is a copy of Python script. And if you look over on the right side, that code area may be totally blank, or it may have something like author equals user. Doesn't make any difference, we're going to change it. However, directly above that, where it says name, you can go in and rename this copy of the Python script. So you can put your name in it, you can put my Python script, whatever you want. Go ahead and rename it right now. And now within this copy of the Python script template, you can put anything you want to. This is a sample of what I put in mine, my name. I put spring 2016. I set up the code to get the date. Yes, there are different ways to do the code. This is just the way I do it. And then I set up some pre-categories that generally I know I'm going to use most of the time when I'm working in Python. So import modules and local variables. However you want to set that script up, you can do it. You can go back and modify it anytime you want to. There's a little better copy.
Why did the date turn red?
It's a reserve word coming out of the system. Question was, why did the date turn red? That's actually a reserve word coming out of the system. And we'll learn more about that later. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you have apply and OK. You can hit OK if you want to. I usually hit apply to make sure I haven't screwed it up in some way, and then I'll hit OK after that. Once you've done that, go to the current project that you have created in Python, right-click on it, and notice in the file options that come up, now at the bottom, in my case, it's my Python script that opens. In your case, it'll be whatever you put in. I would recommend, so I always know whose script it is, that one of the lines in your script template that you're going to use contains your name. We're going to take a look at input functions. We did some work with it last Tuesday, but we're going to continue to work with it today. By the way, these slides are in a PDF format out in the Week 2 content folder. So you can take a look at them after class, during class. If you have an annotation program, you can annotate those slides as you go through. The big thing about the input function, the input functions that we're going to use, is that it's going to wait for a user input. The user has to take some sort of action before the program continues. And that action always terminates with the pressing of the enter key. Now, Python assumes that the entry that you're making is a string character unless it sees it as either an integer or a float. It's going to assume everything is a string, which makes sense. We've got a couple of different options. The string, which indicates that everything within that string is going to be text. So if you have numbers that you're not going to do any mathematical calculations with, you may want to create them as a string to simplify your program. We have an integer, which is basically a whole number. This shouldn't be anything new to most of you. And then finally, we have a float. And a float indicates a decimal. Now, we can declare, as an example, 5.0 as a float. And we can either list it as a float and use the reserved word float, or we can have a variable equal 5.0. As long as Python sees that decimal place, it will interpret that value and the associated variable as a float. Question? Scratch. Okay. All right. Let's start with something simple. Go ahead and create a new Python file, and let's put the code in that we've got up on the screen. Very simple. My name equals input, enter your name. So while you're typing, what is the variable my name going to be? A string. Gold star. Very good. Footnote for you, just my little peccadillo in coding. If I'm declaring a variable and it's going to have an input with it. Unless it needs to be placed somewhere specifically within my script, when I declare it, I'm going to get the user input at that point. Then let's skip a line and add in print my name. Pretty simple little script. And so when we run the program, remember you can right click and run the program. You can select one of the green arrows. You can go to the menu bar and find run in the menu. However you want to do it, this should be what your results window shows, your run window. Enter your name, you've entered your name, and it'll print it out. Remember, when you make entries in PyCharm, you have to be down in that run window for it to print out. If not, you'll modify your program up in the coding window. That's a pretty simple program. Let's add some changes to it. Now we're going to look for an age. So take a look at line 8 on the screen and see how it's been modified. When we are looking for an integer, and we are requiring a user input, we have to tell Python that input is an integer, and this is the way we do it. We encapsulate the input prompt inside the int reserved word. Python automatically knows now that my age is always going to be an integer. One of the things you may notice as some of you finish typing is that if you allow your cursor to rest after you type the comma, you're going to see some prompts that come up. And PyCharm is thinking maybe you don't know what to put in next. So you can look at some of the different things that are available. In particular, look at the \n, and that will automatically move the printout to the next line in the program. We'll see that a little bit later this morning. Also notice if you're going to put print my name, comma, age, when you start to type my, it's going to prompt you for, do you want one of these variables? And notice not only available are the variables that we just created, but also the reserved words that in this case start with M. PyCharm's trying to help us out. You run this program, I put in Harvey Kunkelmeyer, age 41, pretty simple. Prints out Harvey Kunkelmeyer, age 41. No rocket science there. Let's go a little further. Let's use the format command. We played with that last Tuesday. And so now we add line 11. And notice the 2 0 locations with braces around them. And as you're typing this in, remember, once we declare a location with the .format command, we can use that reference anywhere within our print routine, and it'll always refer to that point. So that brace 0, in our case, will always refer to my name. By the way, if you do this in the command line prompt, same thing will happen. You can use the format command in the command line. The other thing you might want to know is that within PyCharm, should we desire not to have a code line that runs all the way across the page, and if we were going to print it out, maybe some of it wouldn't print or it would print ugly, we can go ahead and hold the Shift Control key and go down to the next line. And that will allow us to break up our printout. And you can see how that's done there. So when we run it, we get the desired response. The name I put in was Harvey, the age 49. Hello, my name is Harvey, and my age is 49. My name is Harvey. So again, demonstrating with that .format command that any variable we reference in there can be used anywhere within the printout that we're working with. Good command to have in your back pocket. Okay, everybody's pretty well finished. Next, what we're going to look at, pardon me, is some flow control, and we're going to talk a bit about Boolean values. And we'll get more into this next Tuesday, where we're going to get into if and while statements, but we're going to get a start on it today. All right. A variable set up as a Boolean has two values. Pretty simple. It's either true or it's false. Remember, true and false in Python is always capitalized. If you put it in as lowercase, you'll get an error back from the interpreter. What kind of error would that be? Syntax error. Very good. Gold star. So what I'd like you to do now is go ahead and bring up the command line window for Python. Remember, Windows key R, type in CMD. Remember, you know you're in the Python command line letter when you see the three arrows, the three greater than signs. And we'll do just a quick test. Go ahead and type spam, or really any word that you want to, equals true. Press enter. Then on the next line, type spam, or whatever word you chose, and it's going to come back true. So what we've told Python is that spam currently has a true value. So when we're working with it, anything that we want to evaluate as true, we might look at spam to see if that works. Now, Booleans are stored in variables. So in this case, spam is the variable that we're working with, and we can use any variable name that we want to. My peccadillo is that I try and describe what that Boolean is going to do, or what it does. As an example, with a while statement, I might put while continue. Continue equals true. Something in the code later on would change continue to false, and then my while statement would stop. And we'll look at that again on Tuesday. So we have some comparison operators now that we want to fold into this mix that we're looking at. We're comparing two values, less than, greater than, and what we're looking at is resolving with these comparison operators down to either a true or false, yes or no type value. So the operators are pretty simple. If you've had college algebra or any kind of programming at all, you may even touched on it in high school. We've got a double equal sign or a boom equal sign. This we look at as equal to. This is not equal to. And we'll go over examples here in a second. Less than and greater than. Pretty simple. Hopefully everybody has seen those before. Less than and equal to, greater than and equal to. Those are the 6 comparison operators that we have to deal with in Python. All right, so go ahead and experiment. Put in 42 equals 42, and you get a true back. Put in 42 equal 43, and you get back a false. One of the general errors that new Python coders make is when they get into writing an if statement or a while statement, they forget that when you're comparing two variables or two values, to use a double equal sign. I created 3 variables, A, B, and C, assigned values to them, and then created a formula as a comparison. So you can see A double equals B plus C, which is a true value. Change it to B double equals A plus C, and we have a false value. Let's try with the boom sign. 2 boom sign equals 3, true value. 2 boom sign equals 2 is a false value. Pretty simple. Then go ahead and experiment with the less than, greater than, and the less than equal or greater than equal signs. Notice, by the way, in Python, the equal sign always comes to the right of the less than or equal than. There are some 4GL languages that'll let you swap positions. As long as it's there, it doesn't care. In Python, the equal sign always has to be to the extreme right. One of the things that I don't think we do a good job on in getting you ready to go out and experience programming is talking about requirements. And so I like to cover that in the scripts class. Now that we've modified how we're going to teach the fundamentals class in the future, I'll cover it there. But requirements are really important when you start to code for money. Now, I know somebody will give me an example. Wait, I've got a second cousin 3 times removed that's making $1 million a year, and he doesn't write any stinking requirements. Good for him. Hope he continues to live and make a lot of money. However, if you're going to go to work in this area and work with Chesapeake or Devon or Tinker or FAA or some of the larger businesses in the area, you're going to have to take a look at user requirements and user documents. I've been there. What's the first thing you do when you talk to a user? Yeah, I know what you want. Don't bother me with details. I'm going to go code what you need, right? And you bring it back and they say, this ain't what I wanted. This doesn't work. Why are we paying somebody to code something for us that is not what we want? So you need to communicate with that end user and find out what they want. Now, if you get into the realm of working with someone like FAA or some of the companies in this area that bid government or international contracts, you'll look at a requirements document. And I think I set it up for the 7th of April. We're going to take a look at a detailed requirements document and maybe write a bid for the software part of that document. The document, by the way, is about 200 pages in length. And I'll show you the actual document that I worked with, how it's highlighted, how we marked it, made comments on it, so on and so forth. We'll do that on the 7th of April. But find out what those requirements are, especially if you're writing the program for somebody else. Write it out. It's not good to say, I know what it is, I've talked to the person, I'm going to go home and code it right now. On the way home, you stop at Starbucks, then you stop at your favorite adult beverage institution. By the time you get home, it's, what did they want? So write down whatever that end user tells you and let them talk. May bore you to death, but let them talk and tell you how they're going to use what you're coding for them. The requirements document, if you're lucky enough to have one of those, will tell you in detail exactly what you want and exactly what you have to deliver. Flowchart if necessary. Some coders will tell you, I flowchart everything I do. I flowchart a lot of the stuff I do. If it's simple, if you can see it in your mind, if you can picture it out there in space, then I generally don't flowchart it. A program that's probably under 10 lines, I'm not going to flowchart, unless it's complicated. But flowchart if you need to. Also, you need to get into the habit of writing pseudocode. Again, somebody's going to speak up and say, wait, my sister's third husband, fourth removed, whatever, says, oh, we never use pseudocode. Depends on where you work. Tinker, FAA, Chesapeake, Devon, larger industries, they want to see the pseudocode to make sure things are on the right track. And the way it usually flows is you have a document that tells you what you're going to create. You write the pseudocode for that. Everyone's in agreement on it, and then you go ahead and code. Again, we'll look at this in a lot of detail on April 7th. Then you finally write the script or the code that you're going to use. When we're talking about flowcharts, and we're going to do some in our course, I don't want you to get super detailed or super creative. This is the basic flowchart symbol. I would expect you to use these. The one at the head, this is the start or the end. So your flowchart will start with one of these and it'll finish with one of these. The arrows indicate what direction we're going. This is an input-output. Here's a process that has to be done. Maybe a decision. And here's the decision. So if you can get comfortable with these 5 symbols, that's all you're going to have to do for flowcharting. Now, before somebody raises their hand and says, can we use Visio? Absolutely. Just don't make it more complicated than what it has to be. And if you're going to use Visio, then document your flowchart. Tell me what it's doing. Absolutely fine to draw it by hand. This is a very simple flowchart. We've got a start, we've got an end, we have a decision point, and we have a process that we're going to do. We start, name equals Alice. If the name equals Alice is true, we're going to print Hi Alice. If it's false, the program's going to end. Very simple flowchart. That's what I expect you to start off with, something simple. Again, all of this is out online. The video will be up sometime this afternoon if you need to go back and go over it. So here's a homework assignment that you can do in the classroom. I'd like you to have it turned in before we finish class today. You've got 45 minutes, should not be a problem. I want you to create a program that adds or subtracts 3 numbers. What's the first question you should ask? Come on, this is audience participation. Don't sit there like Starbucks cups.
What numbers?
Little more detail.
What variables would you use for the numbers?
No.
A,
What numbers is...
What's your first number? What's your second number? What's your third number?
No. You need to ask the end user something.
Are you adding or subtracting?
Now, before you determine that, you need to ask the end user one thing. They tell you, I want a program that's going to add or subtract 3 numbers.
Do you want a flow chart of it?
No? Concentrate on the numbers.
Are they negative or positive?
No?
how many numbers do you want added in?
3. Okay. What type of numbers are there in Python? Integers and float. Okay. I'm worried some of you are looking at me like I'm from Mars with a third eye. Integer and float should pop into your mind. All right, so the first question you want to ask your end user, me, is what type of numbers are we going to add or subtract? Are they going to be float or are they going to decimal or integer? Integers is what you're going to create. I want you to do a hand-drawn flow chart. And I want you to do pseudocode. Please print that out in 12 to 14 point print. Don't build it because the requirements might change next Tuesday. We're getting a start on this. Now, for those of you that are sandbagging, don't add anything extra to your pseudocode. All this code has to do is allow the end user to input 3 numbers that are either added or subtracted, and the answer is printed out. Now, I'll give you a hint. How am I going to add or subtract a number if I've got to put 3 numbers in?
You need to have variables for the numbers.
You got to have a variable for the number, yeah. I'll write it on the board. This part you got to remember when you look at the video. What's the answer?
1?
1. All right. I don't have to put a plus sign by any number that I enter in Python. It's going to enter as an integer. I do have to put a minus sign in, so I can enter negative numbers. All right? So you should be able to figure it out from there. Okay, if you have any questions, ask. You've got a little under 45 minutes to get the assignment done. Any questions?
Can you go back to the flow chart on how to make one?
Yeah, I'll put the flow chart back up.
All right.
There you are. Your flow chart right now should be just about this simple.